Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of the Mpic in the year 2020. And I'd like to start by asking Mr. Liebowitz to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a somewhat compressed agenda, but I think we can move through it rather briskly. There's some important updates that that I hope will inform items number 2 and more importantly, item number 3. And that is a report and update that comes from the Board of, as a result of my attendance at the Board of Selectmen meeting, doing the update and requesting certain funds, and also a commentary report recently received by our the representative from BOS to our board, our committee, Chase, who can't be here tonight because he's over dealing with issues of finance with the Board of Selectmen, which is probably where it should be. All right, so there was a meeting at the Board of Selectmen in which an update was provided by Mpic. And as part of, I just basically went through primarily the materials that we all know about that were prepared in succinct form by Mike Fontanella, and pointed out that based on the voting done by the board, by the town meeting, we were making slow but steady progress in fulfilling the requirements of the aims of the master plan. I then turned my attention to things going forward as briefly as I could, and 2 things leapt out almost immediately when I made the suggestion, the guidance to the Board of Selectmen that they seriously consider a $35,000 allotment of funds to the Economic Development Committee so that they can come to a conclusion with assistance. And a draft was prepared by myself and the current new chair of the Economic Development Committee, basically to map out what does economic development mean in Littleton as opposed to anything else. In other words, what do we mean by that? And the idea was to use not one expert, but a series of experts, including those that are being offered by the state at little or no charge, and also bring in outside, also make contact with the community at large and get their input about what they see economic development to be. Well, both the sum of money and the idea that the Board of Selectmen has been basically showing, not paying a lot of attention to economic development or its committee, struck a chord, sometimes resonating, sometimes I think that in my view, the Board of Selectmen were responsive, but on occasion reactionary, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, well, move along. It was taken in some cases as being a positive, let's see what can be done. We don't know what to do with the scale, but it is important. And then the second thing that turned out was, the second thing that emerged during the discussion was the request for $10,000, and at least one member of the Board of Selectmen felt that there was a lot of money. The way it has been presented was there was a lot of money that Mpic has come to Mpic, and I was sort of, what are we talking about? There's only one major project we've done, and apparently it's been attributed that I eventually got an email further. It was a very scattered accounting, which I'm trying to take care of. But basically the perception is that we've been out there spending money on not only the common, but also, for all I can tell, form-based code. We've been putting on soirees involving coffee and candies. I mean, there's a whole list of things. So something happened in the accounting department where, we're going to give this to Mpic or whatever. It'll be straightened out, but there's definitely been a reaction. At the subsequent meeting of the Board of Selectmen, it was interesting that economic development was very important to some members of the Board of Selectmen, and part of it started a conversation about committees and who is really going to be, quote, overseeing, in charge of, as it were, all the various projects, the few large projects that are going on in town. So I'd like to bring your attention, I'd like to also read, or at least take advantage of the material that Chase sent in the absence. By the way, this is an email I received, so most of it is things that I sort of know about and agree with, or I think most of us know about. The sewer working group is, as you know, is now primarily being led by the Littleton Light and Water, Electric and Water Department. So they're basically the, I would have to say, the quarterbacks for this thing, for the sewer, okay? And they got a new consultant to do a full design, because the previous engineering group brought it to the point where there was a design, but there were certain kinds of, shall we say, questions and issues that arose from it, including what sort of equipment is necessary, how does it impact the total cost, and the idea is to try to, as it were, bring the cost within a reasonable scope and yet deliver on having a sewer system in the common, which is no mean trick. So they're doing a new operation. The name of the company is CDM Smith. Will do the full design. And they're also working on the financial model. So this would be almost like a second version of the financial model, but I say this one is the more serious one because we're heading into the town meeting in May. All right, so CDM has the latitude to change, alter, and modify whatever they need with the approval of the group. That's the new sewer, or the existing sewer task group, to make the system operational. We are working on site selection, the size of the treatment area, and the technologies involved in the system. For example, they were looking at the anaerobic digester, which apparently is causing vibration for no other reason that I don't think people understand what it is, but it's all right, is getting some attention to make it sure it's viable. That's a fancy way of saying it might cost too much. So it could be left out, left in, not clear. That's going to be a technical and financial decision. Now, here comes the interesting one, and I provided to you I hope all of you have a copy of the memo from the Office of the Administrator, in which a committee has been, a Littleton Common Revitalization Committee has been formed. We have, I'm going to read here because it's easier for me to do this. We have established a new committee comprised of a member of the Sewer Working Group, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, the Transportation Advisory Committee, Affordable Housing Trust, and Economic Development Committee, that's 6, to serve as a communication forum to address all things common redevelopment related. For the next few weeks, the directional flow of information will be primarily from the Sewer Working Group to the other incorporated groups. Furthermore, this group will help the town answer questions as projects in the common come forward about their relevant area of expertise. What this refers to is they're trying to get each member of this new committee to use a particular set of skills, pre-existing skills and knowledge, to make an impact on apparently addressing concerns and questions from the public.
What is the name of that committee?
This committee is called the, this is the Littleton Common Revitalization Committee. And by the way, such a committee, has been a Littleton Common Committee already in existence. This is, I guess, something different. Okay. Right? Any questions? I don't want to rush this, all right? This is
fine.
All right? Similarly, when we have the sewer moving forward, we'll need the sewer working group to know what's going on with the redevelopment above ground. All this is a theme that, of course, budget. The BOS is becoming a bit weary of consultant-led efforts that produce nebulous results. And it's unclear what they're referring to, because the only nebulous results I've heard so far unfortunately have to do with not the common. That was very specific. So I can only surmise that it must mean something else. And it could be because it's been delayed. It could be having to do with the train station area, because that, I don't know if that, the planning board has been running that and apparently has been frustrated by the lack of flow of information from the consultant. There was one forum on it, I don't know if you attended it, and there have been other meetings on it, but it basically has been quiet for a while, which is not unusual given the holidays and everything else. So I don't know what Chase meant in here, all right? Furthermore, and then becomes interesting, this hits Mpic pretty hard, and I couldn't, this is Chase not, I think, following the bouncing ball, but apparently he doesn't realize, or the board has decided to forget what has been delivered from the funds that we have had. So I'll take this up separately, because there's basically a map, a working map that lays out how the Littleton Common should unfold in its revitalization with timelines, financial projections, the stimulus. I mean, it was a pretty, very specific, including the economic trade-offs, which were conservative, and it's probably one of the most detailed ones we've been able to see for many kinds of projects in town. And Mpic, I think, only peripherally should take the credit. It's the consultants who, we beat them up. They still produce pretty good stuff. And by the way, one of the consultants is continuing on to provide to the planning board, as planned, the meat on the skeleton idea of using form-based code for the revitalization of the common. So I'll take that up. So the formation of this committee doesn't change anything for us. What I'd like you to do is take, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because one of my concerns tonight is to discuss, especially in view of Mike's contribution and subsequently Lyle's and any of the other of you who have produced something about what we want to communicate or should be communicated to the public, the interesting way in which the Board of Selectmen have formulated the formation of this amalgam committee. In nowhere, if you look at it, what's interesting is in nowhere does it say that who or what is going to do what with the information obtained. What's going to happen to the concerns? Maybe it's implicit that it goes, and I'm only stopping there because I don't know. I mean, I can surmise, but what I find interesting is that it forms a committee which produces what to go where. So the question that I'm bringing here is, I think forming a committee that provides information from the community, for the community, is a great idea, but that's, and takes their concerns and incorporates it. But where does that information flow to, as it were, have it heard, digested, incorporated, and used in a useful way? And there's really two parts of that. One is, what can the town, and what I mean by the town, I mean the town government and its citizens, do about their concerns affecting basically private property, and number two, state control of transportation. That's, in other words, there are certain things over which the town has limited ability to change, or to alter, or to fix. They can set the table, as Marion and other planners like to say, but there are severe limits, and we've understood that. And the second piece of what's notably absent from this is an awareness of the significant role, potentially, that private property owners in any of these projects are going to play, because it's their neighborhood at the moment. And there's no mention of any of that in the motion that created them, or in the mission of this committee. So the question here is Mpic's role appropriate to provide guidance about this situation? Or is this something that, because it's a policy set by the Board of Selectmen and voted on, is it now, as it were, acceptable? And do we think this is a good thing to do? The other piece is experience in town with amalgam committees, much less committees, is interesting. And the one I'm pointing out to is the Space Committee for the town building. That's an amalgam of, I think, it has 9 members, and they have great difficulty getting a quorum. And so far, even though the library has its fate more or less determined, still unclear what will come from that. So they're difficult committees to operate. So the first question, I know that you're having a rough time seeing where this is going. Do we have any guidance about these items, because they're all in the master plan?
Yes, I have to say, I'm kind of troubled by this. I first heard mention of that just a few minutes ago when I was at the Budget Committee.
Uh-huh. Omission of what? I'm sorry.
Of this new town,
Yeah.
The Littleton Common
Little Common
Revitalization.
Revitalization Committee.
Yeah.
I'd never, you
Yeah.
know, and it sort of seems odd that after all that we'd been doing and all the work of the consultants that we had in the report,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
was it the, what did we call it? The
Roadmap.
roadmap.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm thinking.
Yeah.
The roadmap and so on, that seems to have vanished, or, I mean, it's sort of puzzling. And of course, Chase has been to very few of our meetings, so maybe that's part of the problem, and,
I don't think so.
No.
I think that both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen have not only received, but have been given briefings on those. So they know about them. It's not a question of not knowing.
knowing, then deciding that they're not happy with all of that, and so they have to go in a different direction, or?
I don't want to overinterpret. I'm just going to go by I'm just going to go by the motion that passed. I take the tasking statement, the mission statement provided by the Board of Selectmen to be the operational here, which is its information flow. There's nothing about,
Are you referring to the one for MPIC or
No,
for
no.
this new committee?
the new one. A new committee, amalgam committee, made up of what was just described.
Mhm.
6 different inputs, 6 different members, who would take the concerns and information from the public and provide explanation and take the concerns in.
And then what?
There's no statement made. Let me,
Take input and then,
Seems like we've been taking input from the public for quite a long time.
Here's the charge. I was seeking guidance from you folks tonight.
well, the first thing
Just
that
left me more
the first thing
puzzled
that
than-
strikes me is redundancy, a little bit redundancy with our committee. Is this something that we could take on? Or is it?
Our mission is rather explicit. Our mission states, we are here to promote and also provide guidance for the master plan, not just for the common, not just for Foster Street,
Yeah,
all right?
so this new committee is strictly for a very limited, let me read it.
Yeah, I mean,
Hold on.
and I'm done sort of like going over this, and I'm not looking for another role, or I don't feel that we're being I don't see we're being displaced.
Mhm.
I have another suggestion that's more radical, but I'll wait until you folks have a
Okay.
chance to give it some thought.
I mean, I think that it's the tasks in the master plan, the goals and the different items that are in there are specifically charged to be taken care of by particular boards and committees.
Agreed.
So, you know, from our perspective as the implementation committee, I think it's important that we keep an eye on the fact that those boards and committees are working towards achieving the goals in the master plan, but it's their prerogative to make determinations about how to do that, when to do that, what pace to do it at, relative to competing priorities and resources. And I think that as individual members of the community, we're always free to go to a meeting and weigh in and say, you know, I have some concerns about the direction you're taking, but ultimately it's their call. I think the only time that we would be able to explicitly get involved is if they are explicitly choosing not to do something, then it would be in our purview to say, we, as a committee, we disagree with that. It's in the master plan. You know, we don't think you can simply dismiss it out of hand. You can delay it. You can say now's not the right time. You know, those types of things. We have a debate about that. But if they want to go at it in this manner, I don't think we have the purview to say, no, you shouldn't do that and you should do this instead. Unless, you know, we feel that, I don't know, individually, you know, go knock yourself out. But, I don't think that we really, because, I mean, it seems like they are implying a fair amount in here. The objective is to maintain consistent flow of information and updates between boards, committees, and the public. That's what this group is charged to do.
Right.
Is to maintain that consistent flow of information. Right. You ask, like, well, you know, what's the deliverable? What are they going to do with the information? They're going to maintain a consistent flow of information with it. Okay. How they're actually going to do that, again, is implied. Address questions and concerns of the community outside of the engineering and construction
Community
components.
outreach forums.
Assist, right, with community outreach and public forums that may be created. So, I think that there's a reasonable amount of framework here for people to say, oh, I kind of understand what they're doing. We'll see how they do it and how effective they are at it. I mean, the devil's always in the details. And we'll see how they execute on it, but it's their baby to, carry
Well,
a
it's
backpack or put in a car seat or let's stand up in the front seat. I don't know,
I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but as I read, I mean, there's not a lot to read, there's like one paragraph here. It seems to be so very much focused on the sewer project. It says Town Revitalization Committee, but Littleton Common Revitalization Committee, but it says collectively address questions and concerns of the community that fall outside the engineering and constructional component of the sewer project. It doesn't say other projects, it says specifically
Yes.
the sewer project. Group will be available to assist the sewer working group. So, I wonder if it isn't that there's, I mean, maybe I'm coming at this from just my previous sort of reactions to things, that it isn't the sort of, if it isn't that there's a fear that a lot of people are anti-sewer, and that the goal of this is to try and assuage the fears that people might have about the sewer, or the unhappiness that people have about the sewer, and that this will be a way, I mean, it's hoped to be a way to,
I don't know if it's
calm those fears, or to,
right. I don't think it's that they're necessarily trying to address the concerns of people that are anti-sewer. I think they're trying to address the confusion that people still seem to have about how the sewer implementation is being proposed, especially as it relates to the particular property owners in the common.
Yeah,
For instance, there was a Facebook
okay,
post.
you're probably right.
Right, there's a Facebook post and I believe there was a video on LCTV where questions were raised about, well, what if people can't afford to pay the betterment? They're talking about individual residential property owners. But as I think I understand it, and I've been hearing a lot, paying attention to this, if you don't want to pay the betterment, you simply don't have to. So you're not under pressure. Nobody's being forced to pay for something they don't want. So I think that's the Board of Selectmen and the other parties that are involved in trying to facilitate a sewering solution in the common are saying, wait a minute, apparently our efforts to make sure people understand how this is going to work have failed to a degree to this point, so we need to keep trying, and this is their next best idea of how to try to do that. And then it comes down to, that's the most immediate concern I think people have, and some confusion. And then, of course, there are the next steps. Well, what about traffic, and what about parking, and what about this, and what about that, form-based code? How's it gonna look? How's it gonna impact the town? And I think this is their next best idea that they have at the moment for trying to make sure that as the town comes forward to make a decision about whether we should or shouldn't do this, we're all working off the same particular set of facts, assumptions, and other things associated with that. Not that I'm saying no because I misunderstand it, or I'm saying yes because I misunderstand it. And I think this is just what they're trying to do here. That's the way I read it.
Okay, I mean, that's the way I started coming at it. And here, even tonight, there was, even though I think all of us in this group understand very clearly that according to the rules or the regulations already put in place for the sewer district, is commercial property owners are required, they're the only ones who can't have the option, don't have the option to opt out.
Right.
So they're in, whether they can, I mean, it's an affordable item for most commercial operators because
Well.
it's a tax, has many positive tax deductions for them, let's put it that way. So it's there. So my inclination with this is I'm looking for guidance here, and I'm beginning to hear, there's nothing here for us to guide about. That is to say, yay, nay, just do we go as far as saying, that looks good, we'll be keeping an eye on it, that's all. That's all we really, unless someone here feels that we ought to be more aggressive about it.
No, I agree. When I first heard the phrase, and as I say, the first time I heard about it, when I was at
Sure.
the budget meeting, which went on to other things than the budget.
Sure.
I was troubled by it, and when, I first heard about this, I was sort of troubled by it, but now I'm rather less troubled by it. I think Mike is absolutely right, that basically, if they want to assuage people's concerns about the sewer, let them do it, that's fine, and it's
Or-
not
or-
something that we need to.
Or about traffic.
Yeah, right.
During the construction or after the construction.
right.
Because doing the revitalization of the common is just not the sewer.
Yeah.
We can be assured of that. There's a lot of parts to it. So the other piece that's missing, and we could get opinions on that, not opinions, but views on that, is that left out of we'll call exchange and flow of information are specifically the property owners, both residents and non-residents in the common. And by the way, some of the residents on Robinson Road, which is right next to the common, especially the part that's going to be more than likely sewered. So to me, it was an interesting thing, and I think this may be a way, hopefully, of answering a lot of concerns more effectively. We'll see. Okay, so is there any motion we want to make here, anything we want to do, or just leave it in peace?
I would just leave it in peace. Like you say, I'll keep an eye on it.
That's it. Okay, I'm good. Thank you very much for your
Yeah, thank you.
guidance.
Thank you, Mike. As I say, I was much concerned when I first saw this, but then after reading it 3 times, I began to realize that
Okay.
it probably wasn't something to worry about.
Now, I want to raise a subsidiary question, and not because I think it's imminent or something we should act on, but I want to, in view of the movement of the town to take a little bit more positive posture toward at least the common and some other things that are in the master plan, is the concept of a promote and guiding committee like Mpic, does that still have viability? I'm just going to leave the question open, because given the momentum, given the appetite, how much Littleton can do per unit time, financially and human resources wise. So keep an eye on this one. All right. member input, sorry and what I'd like to do is, if I could, first of all, is there any independent member input, whether or not it's on the agenda, that anyone would like to make? Please.
One, and so what I will do is, in our last agenda item, Mike used the term choosing not to do, or choose the phrase, choosing not to do something in the master plan is not okay. So after copious work and publication and 67 points, we spent a heck of a lot of time on Littleton Common revitalization. And as I understand at the moment, the entire progress of form-based code literally hangs in the balance. So I would certainly like to put forth to my Mpic friends that attending the planning board meeting on Monday, February 10th is of extreme importance if we believe that Littleton Common revitalization is something we want to see happen. So I did attend the follow-up of what our meetings were, where the architecture firm was presenting and testing the form-based code, and I was all of a mind, here we go. And as I understand, it's supposed to be on the spring town meeting.
That's correct.
It may not be if it does not pass this hearing on February 10th.
And unfortunately, I didn't attend, nor have I seen the video yet of that meeting. What is when you say it hangs in the, is it administrative issues that it's taking too long to get folks on board?
Nope,
Or is it
it's
just?
all set to go, and this is the last meeting to move it forward. However, if it does not come with the acceptance and approval of a majority of the planning board, it will not move forward to Springtown meeting.
So I take it there's lack of support on the part of some members.
I understand that there is not a majority vote at this point, and with one member having left and gone to a different position, there is not a vote that will turn the tide one way or another. So in my limited understanding of how town proceedings work, the town needs to show up on Monday, February 10th, at the planning board meeting, and make it very clear, this is in our master plan, we want this to happen, and at the very least, the planning board must bring it to town meeting in spring so that the town can vote on it, because it's not the planning board's vote where everybody else has worked on this for years.
Do you have a location and time?
I
not, we can
believe
find
the
it.
planning board always meets in, is it 103?
Yeah. 103, they're generally, it depends on how many hearings they've got.
Yeah,
So.
Typically 7 PM?
I would think yes.
Okay.
I'll track it down and make sure I email everyone here.
I'll put it on my calendar.
Thank you. I would invite everyone. I will certainly be there, because as you've seen from me, I think this is what Littleton's gonna be when it grows up, and I'd like to be part of it. And if it doesn't
Everyone
happen, it'd
watching,
be a
everyone
horrible shame.
watching should show up.
Yes, planning board, Monday, February 10th, and to the best of my knowledge, may start as early as 6. But
Okay.
That's what I thought. They're, okay.
I think they have a lot to do, but this is whether or not the planning board will bring it to town meeting, which I believe the whole town has the right to hear and vote upon.
So this hearing will determine, I take it, whether or not it gets brought forward
Right.
to the
Town
town meeting,
meeting.
not so much voting approval. They could
Right.
bring it forward with, we don't support it,
Right.
but they could also say, we don't want to bring it forward at all. So
Which I think
there's
would
a
be
two.
Well, that's an
horrible
interesting, point. They could vote to bring it forward as an article at town meeting, and then they could choose to take a vote whether or not they support it. And to Lyle's point earlier, that should be, you would like to think that that would be the route that they would take, because as Lyle said, this is something that has been supported by multiple boards and groups, and even a person who disagrees with it may be that they don't disagree with form-based code in general, they may disagree with the particular aspects of the form-based code bylaw that the planning board brings forward to town meeting.
Yeah.
And it's well within our rights as members of town meeting to vote no. It's also, not to support it, it's also well within our rights as boards to support or not support particular articles at town meeting. However, as a board, we should be as boards and board members, we should be very judicious about choosing to use our seat at the table to determine what does or doesn't get evaluated at town meeting on a warrant. You know, if they need more time they don't think they're happy with the way they've got the form-based code bylaw written and they want more time that's one thing to say, well, that's why we're not bringing it forward. But for them to simply say, as currently construed, we think form-based code's no good over, like as a general concept, and we're not gonna let the town debate it any further, and we have and then I don't know if the zoning bylaw can only be amended by the planning board. It is possible that the selectmen could also vote to bring an article forward to amend the bylaw, the zoning bylaw, regardless of whether it's form-based code or anything else. So it will be interesting to see how that portrays. But I would like to think that the planning board would at least allow it to come forward as a warrant article, and then they can debate it, whether or not they support the particular article as it's written when it gets on the warrant for town meeting.
The other thing is a mechanical one, and that is the departure of one of the members of the board, of someone who got voted in, has left. And they also have to appoint someone to take that place. That term of that appointee is May, that is, at the town meeting it ends, I guess, or shortly thereafter. Is it your understanding that, or anyone's here understanding that a temporary member with a termination date, are they in a position to vote one way or the other? I mean,
Yes.
is it also a voting issue that they've got?
I mean, it sounds like they're 2-2 right now?
As I understand
So,
it, it's
right,
2-2.
so anybody that's appointed would have full voting rights.
Okay.
Now, they can choose to abstain on things if they feel like, well, gee, I wasn't here for all of that, so I'm gonna choose to abstain. That's certainly anybody's prerogative when you're on a board. You can choose not to vote up or down on a particular issue. But that's why it's important sometimes to appoint that fifth member, even if it's for a short period of time, so that you explicitly do or don't do things instead of implicitly, because 2-2 to vote doesn't carry, that's implicit, right? And we don't know how it would have gone if that fifth vote was there, so, interesting.
And just for clarification, I don't think the planning board is going to vote whether you approve or don't approve of form-based code as a technology. I'll just use that term. It's whether they're going to approve or not approve the particular regulations and overlay. I don't know what they're doing, but I would assume it's some sort of overlay, because there already is an overlay on the common area. So this would be an overlay on an overlay, okay? Or maybe they found a way around it, I don't know. So it could be what it looks like using form-based code. Form-based code is not something that can vote out of existence. That will continue on regardless, but maybe they have other ways of achieving.
Lyle, do you have any sense of what the objections are?
No, I'd be speaking out of turn and conjecture. I don't know, but I just wanted to bring it up here
Okay.
because I would be concerned if something that so much effort has gone forth, and finances, hiring the architecture firm to design form-based code, were to not get presented to the town after all that we've been through. I understand that they decided in the fall to wait because they didn't have it quite worked out. I'm in support of that. But now I understand it hangs in the balance and may or may not come to town if they don't choose to. Even if they bring it to town and say, we don't agree on this, if it didn't get to town, that would be a horrible waste.
Interesting. Mhm. So,
There's my passion.
okay, so let me just take Lyle's notation one step further. Is there anyone here who knows at this moment they can't make that meeting February the 10th?
I won't make that meeting, but I am going to email the planning board as a citizen of Littleton, let them know how I feel.
Okay.
Excellent.
I think I can go.
Okay,
I don't know at this point.
okay,
I'll check.
can I simply ask that if you can't make the meeting, that you compose a very, I'm sorry, I'm assuming that you want to see form-based codes used, okay, as a way of achieving the town's goal, and that you just email us, Mike is planning to do if you can't make it. And Lyle, I'll know you'll be there.
Yeah.
And I'll be there. And
I'll try my best. I think I can do it.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, so this brings us finally to the third one, in which Lyle is, as far as I know, does anybody else here, in addition to Lyle, has done any work at all in outreach? In other words, what should we be doing? How should we be doing it? What is the message that we should be carrying at this point? And let me just express the concern this way. The idea of putting together a Littleton Common Revitalization Committee made up of other members of other committees is a good one for the purpose stated. Step one for implementation of the master plan as it applies to the Common has to do with two things: the zoning and putting in a sewer system solution. So, between now and May, what is the recommended posture of this committee? In view of, I do not know the timeline for this. I don't want to cross wires with an existing. I'm looking for some input for what we should move forward with, because in a certain sense, Lyle has landed on the spot. A form-based code is something that we should be particularly paying attention to, as well as the sewer itself. Those are the two items.
They go hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in view of that, I could indicate from your memo, Lyle, what you felt was important from your point of view. What is the best way, if we were involved in it, what is the best way between now and May for anyone, including us, to basically tackle either one or both of the major components? And I'll start with you, Lyle, because you landed on a couple of them.
Yeah, so in my architectural taking in of the world, I've had occasion to be in a few places that have these elements in them. And so having literally walked through them and perceived the spaces and walked through our own downtown and seen all the big house, little house, back house, and barns that are there, yeah, this would allow us to develop that area in a way that would be conducive to people walking, people stopping their cars and enjoying places, public meeting places that would encourage more people to stop on the busy highways and byways. So part of what we talked about is how do we help folks see this? So I get to see it because I get to imagine 3D spaces and how people interact with them. But if we were able to do some series of study of video walkthroughs and perhaps flyovers with drone video to help people understand what a successful design of this nature might look like and turn out to be. Just trying to figure out how to help people see what I see is what I was trying to capture in my comments here. So it would involve some video production and some capable people to put it together, but if we could help the town understand that this really could bring some revitalization, I think it would be that much clearer that, sure, that's something we should move towards.
So you're talking about a drone, basically scenes from a drone?
As well as a walkthrough.
As well as a walkthrough. All right.
Not everybody understands the bird's eye view, but if they can understand
Okay, so those,
ground views, so video help to get people to
so
see.
those are visual aids.
Visual aids.
Okay. Now, leaving aside how we get them,
Yeah.
if we had them, where, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question. Where did you say that you went, that you experienced this yourself?
Lots of different places, but Old Rhinebeck, New York is a lovely form-based code.
Anywhere near
Courtyard.
Boston that you could go to?
West Acton,
So
the Timeout Market in the
my
old Sears building in
suggestion
Boston.
is take your iPhone and, like, I think you just need 30 seconds
Yeah.
of walking through with your iPhone and filming, and then get it on like Facebook story, Twitter, and Instagram stories. Hashtag Littleton and spread it all over, get it on the Littleton Moms Facebook page, and just like a little, like not more than 30 seconds. I think people need little snippets.
Yeah.
And maybe do that occasionally every other week or every week, and just something like that, that said, and that with some sort of word that says like hashtag form-based code or something like that, so that people start tying the word form-based or the phrase form-based code to a visual.
Yeah.
Because form-based code, what does that mean to anyone? Layperson, nothing. You need to get the visual, and it needs to come real quick and then maybe a few different times so that people see it over and over again. That would be my
Cool.
suggestion.
And local Gibbet Hill
Okay.
has a barn. Because
Yep.
Old House Back House, barn, and oh, what's in it? But a lovely restaurant that people write about and talk about and invite their friends to. So,
Yeah, so
yeah, it's all
we
right
could
here.
also maybe go to all these, like do a hashtag Littleton form-based code,
Yeah.
and then go to all these different places, and us as committee members, or maybe charge our teenage kids to go
Yeah.
out there and hashtag these things for us, and then, you know, that might bring some awareness so that now people hear the word, hear the phrase, and then they have an image in their head.
Cool, I like it, Megan.
Okay, so the action here would be for, I hate to use the word, a someone using their phone to go out to,
Yep,
in their ordinary course of their lives,
yeah,
not their leisure lives, but their lives,
Yeah.
and take the necessary pictures and so there's a
Yeah.
two-step, capturing the images.
Yeah.
Then we have part two is
Distributing it.
distributing it. So, Lyle, which of the two do you think you could pull off with a minimum of angst?
Well, I mean, anyone and everyone could be invited to do that. I would have minimal success in being able to capture it all, but I could certainly try.
Not all, but enough. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, now, distributing it.
I can distribute it, but I also could probably videotape if you tell me like where to go. Like if you tell me, go to this place in Gibbet Hill and film this, I could do that, and then I can distribute it to the people that I'm connected with. And then I could send it out like via email so that you guys, if you know anyone that has Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and even YouTube, that has connections to Littleton.
Littleton Moms is a good idea.
Yeah, and I'm on that Facebook
Yeah.
page, and
There's a lot of word of mouth stuff that goes on, and all I have to do
Yeah.
is post it something like those, and it
Right.
spreads.
right.
So I could
I
certainly
just-
capture notions of places.
I
that would
just
be
don't know
worth seeing.
I don't know form-based code enough to know, to
Yeah.
recognize it myself. So
Yeah.
I would need someone like you to tell me like either
Cool.
where to go videotape, or if you have little videotapes or have something like that, I would be more than happy to disperse it as much as I can.
A little bit of time together would be a good thing. I'd be
Okay.
happy to do
All right,
that.
all right, because the other question I have is that there's a door that opens here, which I've heard, and not from Littleton only, but do we need, quote, form-based code to achieve what's in West Acton or Gibbet Hill? Do we need form-based code, or can we do this with regular Euclidean descriptors?
It would be drastically limited without it.
Ah, okay, so there's a take-home message here.
Which is,
Well, there's a reason why form-based code works. It has to do with consistency and description and making it more efficient, and frankly, less expensive for whoever's doing the build.
It also makes it cohesive.
Yes.
So not just one person decides to do something and 6 people don't,
Right.
so consistent, cohesive,
Yeah,
And it develops a sense of place.
Yes,
So
it-
that the whole thing would live together of the same language.
things don't have to necessarily look exactly alike. They have to follow a consistent theme.
And in fact, they can't, they're encouraged not to, so.
That's correct.
The testing of the model is using the different parts and pieces to put
Right.
it together.
And that's why West Acton looks the way it does, and why Gibbet Hill looks, I mean, it's all, I don't think it's obvious to the naive observer this form-based code was used for Gibbet Hill. I don't think it's obvious at all.
No.
And had I not asked, I wouldn't have known, okay? But you obviously know, so I think
Yeah.
the two of you should exchange
Yeah.
texts.
Would it break any kind of open meeting law if the two of us met to work on this
No.
together?
Nope,
Okay.
not at all.
We'll
Alright.
find some time, maybe.
Yeah, email me and we'll sit down and we'll figure this out.
Okay. Lyle, I think that's going to keep you busy
I think so.
until our next meeting, and
Yep.
it's going to keep, thanks Megan, thanks Lyle, very, very much. Okay, now,
I think that's great. I feel so totally inept about any of these things. I could not even conceive of doing either of what you're gonna do. So I think it's great that
You can be our
that you're doing
cheerleader.
it.
Cheer us on.
Yes.
And that'll be,
I just want to point out to you that the Pilgrims, no, wait, I want to be careful.
wait, what?
No, the folks in Virginia, was it Virginia? The first,
Jamestown?
Jamestown, they tried form-based code, didn't work for them because they didn't implement it properly. Storage didn't work out too well for them. All right. So I think that, now, the next topic is, so what we're going to be doing is trying to get our hands on some information that would be useful. I think it would be useful to communicate what we're doing or trying to do to the planning board. Or do you think we ought to produce it first and then have it to them? Because we are basically encroaching on their space.
Cheerleading from townspeople that care.
Mike, you've been quiet. I'd like to have a contribution from you on this.
I mean, I think that it's important for us to stay in front of primarily the planning board and the board of selectmen as we go. I mean, I would just be careful that both of them have bitten off big chunks, important chunks of what we expect to see out of the master plan implementation. And it's gonna take time for them to digest that stuff and the town to digest it one way or the other. And, there are times where we need to just sit back and be patient and let things take their course. Lyle brought up a good point about the potential inclusion or non-inclusion of a warrant article on form-based code in Springtown meeting. So that's something that we could say, okay, in the short term, that's something for us to be in front of the planning board about, to say, hey, how you going with that? But then, in terms of the sewer thing, it sounds like the Board of Selectmen are moving forward, the water department's moving forward, so, keeping an eye on it, but, sitting back and letting them do their work, that's fine. I think that there are other boards that we can say, okay, there's, other things that maybe aren't quite as pressing or as dynamic, but are still in the master plan, so we should go back through it and say, is it time to get in front of the historical commission? Is it time to get in front of the transportation advisory committee, with this item or that item, or the school committee about Shaker Lane, or whatever it is? I think we should make sure that we're always concurrent on that stuff and up to date on that stuff. And then, if we say, oh, this seems like right now things are moving along and everybody seems to be doing some part of the master plan, and it's okay for us to just sit back and wait to see how it plays out, So I think that's more what we should be doing, is just making sure that we're, as a group, comfortable that we've evaluated where all the boards are and where they are in the master plan implementation. And if they're good, then we just sit back and let it play out for some period of time, and leave it at that until they're not good. And it's like, okay, hey, time to, goose somebody a little bit and get them going again, so.
So coming back to the project here to do shall we say, a visual on this. Do you envision this being available sometime from February 10th to May, or is this pre-February 10th?
It's probably far more likely to be available February 10th to May.
Okay.
Megan and I have managed to see each other in
No,
between meetings,
I was
but
almost being,
February 10th is probably not gonna happen.
okay. So this is something that will hopefully, if for any reason the planning board falters in its forward progress, this will be almost like a rescue operation.
Yeah.
All right. Will I be, my notion would be to let the planning board and the board of selectmen know at the next earliest possible meeting informally that we're going to go in this direction, and that we can make the materials available as they if they would
Sure.
like.
Yeah.
Is that all right with you?
Mhm.
I don't want to get out ahead of either one of those guys, but, you know,
And I would just reaffirm what Mike said. I think this group should be nimble enough and unburdened enough that we can be aware of what the other groups are doing to make sure they're still doing what we see as important pieces of our master plan.
yeah, well, it's, if.
And trusting that they will.
Yeah, so, this brings me to the next thing, that is, I have, the topic number 4 is meeting frequency. And what I mean by that is, thus far, I've scheduled 1 meeting per month. I would regard, the February 10 meeting of the planning board to be, if we have a quorum there of us, that's our meeting,
Mhm.
unless there's an objection,
It's great.
That'd be great.
okay?
Mhm.
And we wouldn't have one until the following, that would bring us into March. So unless there's an objection to that, and then I'll test the water to see whether or not we need to meet less often than every month.
Okay.
Now, one final thing, just so you know before we go, I have put a request to be alerted, and I will go into the Board of Selectmen and whoever to make the case that we would like to have $10,000 for outreach. I can always withdraw it, and, you know, assuming I can win the battle over, oh, we've spent too much money and whatever, okay. And very frankly, that money is for exactly outreach on master plan items. So I can step back and say, no, we're okay, or say, no, we don't need it all, or I can plow ahead and say, yes, we're gonna need the funds as described, which is basically for our committee-driven forum. So we're not having outside folks come in and do it. We would be responsible for renting the space, setting up all the forum tables, doing all the workshop efforts. We're not hiring people to do that.
Okay,
Okay, I will go into battle on that basis then.
great.
Public input. Sorry to say no one's here. I invite folks again, but it's a busy night. Okay, is there any other business before I go to the minutes that people would like to bring to bear? The minutes. Anyone have any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Good to me.
I do not.
Like, nope.
So I would move that we approve the minutes.
We have a motion.
November 18th, 2019.
This would be for November 19.
Correct.
18,
2019.
Oh, 19, it is 19.
Yes, 2000, it's November 8, 19, 2019.
There it is, I see
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
I'll second that motion.
Heard a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good.